here. So I'm going to get started so that we have the full time and so that we can leave as much time as possible for questions at the end. So hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Sweeney with Social Contract. I will do an intro of everyone here from the Delaware State Housing Authority, but I just wanted to introduce myself because many of you might not know me. I will be running the information session today with my colleagues here from DSHA on the line to answer questions at the end. I'm going to ask that folks, if you can, in the next 5 or 10 minutes as we start, just type your name, your organization, and your email into the chat, just so that we can see who's here. And so everyone else who's on the call can see who's here, because we are not going to have time to do introductions with all of these folks. So if you could do that just in the next 5 or 10 minutes as we're going. The second thing that I'm going to ask is that you please stay on mute so that we don't have unwanted or accidental background noise. And just type your questions into the chat. You can type them in as we're going. You don't have to wait till the end. I don't want you to forget them, but please just type them in instead of coming off mute. There's a lot of us here. So just trying to manage that. And my colleague Danielle, who's on the line with us, is going to collect all of those questions as you go into a document. We are going to answer as many of them as possible on this call today. And then the rest of them we promise will be answered in the Q&A document that will be circulated in a few weeks. We'll go over that when we talk about timeline. So please just, for those who just joined, I'm about to get started, but 2 housekeeping notes, which is, as you'll see, everybody's in the chat is putting in their name, organization, and email, just so you can see who's here. We can see who's here. And then if you can please just stay on mute throughout as we talk through this info session, and then we'll save as much time as possible for questions and answers at the end. So as we're going, please just enter your questions into the chat instead of coming off mute, since there are so many of us, and my colleague Danielle will collect all the questions and we will have time at the end to answer as many as possible. Okay, it seems like it has slowed down with people entering. So I'm gonna quickly share my screen and we will get started. All right, let me present. Awesome. So thank you all for joining us for this information session on DSHA's newest program, Housing Outreach and Stability Services. The notice of funding went out last Monday, a week. Oh, let me let these people in, sorry. A week before today. And we hope you all saw the link. If not, these slides will be going out after this meeting. And there's a link multiple times. The link is in this slideshow. So for those who have not had the chance to see it yet. Today, we're going to talk through a lot of the aspects of the Housing Outreach and Stability Services program. So we'll give an overview. We'll review key dates and application requirements, and pre-application requirements, and also application requirements and scoring. And then, like I said, we're going to save as much time as possible for a Q&A. So again, for those who just joined, please just put your questions and answers, your questions into the chat. We will provide answers to as many as possible during this information session at the end. And then those that we do not get to will be answered in the Q&A document that will go out to everyone on this call in the next few weeks. All right, so just some introductions. I mentioned at the top, for those who are here, I am Kirsten Sweeney from Social Contract. Social Contract is working with DSHA on this program, and specifically right now on getting this NOFA released. And so I will be going through most of the content for the information session today. And I'm joined by 4 colleagues from DSHA who will be helpful in answering questions during the Q&A at the end. So we have Devin Manning, Marva Hammond, Justina Brinkley, and Kyle Jones-Bay. So thank you all very much for joining from DSHA. And like I said, because we keep having people join, so sorry if you have to keep hearing, please put your questions into the chat, and then we'll get to as many as possible at the end. All right. So very briefly, the overarching goal of the Housing Outreach and Stability Program is to assist eligible individuals and families in identifying and accessing services that would support their ability to obtain and sustain housing. There's a link here. And as I said, these slides will go out after this information session to all the folks here. There's a link here to the announcement, the NOFA. So you all can take a look. All of this information from the info session today is in that NOFA. And if you have additional questions that come up, we'll talk about it, that come up after this information session. We'll talk about it in the timeline section, but there's an email address that you can send them to. And we're happy to respond to those questions up to a certain date. The funding source and availability for this program, there's $2 million that DSHA is making available for this program. It is a 12-month program that will begin July 5th of this year and run through July 5th of 2024. All grant agreements will be executed by July 5th for programs to start that day, for services to start that day. There is not a limit on the amount of funding that can be requested if you submit an application, but the full amount may not be funded based on how many folks apply, how many awards are granted, and how much funding is available. We ask that you give an honest and accurate assessment of what your budget is for the services that are outlined as required in this NOFA, and those that you think are important for you to deliver the services in the way that's outlined in the NOFA. And then we will work with the amount of money that we have to figure out what is available for each awardee. Just some admin on the funding. Those that are awarded funding will be required to draw down the funds quarterly, and we are doing that on a reimbursement basis. Up to 90% of the funds can be used for program delivery, and then the remaining 10% can be used for administration. Any applicants must be nonprofit organizations, and you must have a physical presence in Delaware. We'll talk a little bit more about physical presence in a bit, but you must at least have a physical presence in the state of Delaware. State agencies are not eligible for this program. We mentioned the execution of a grant agreement by July 5th. All awardees will be required to sign a grant agreement with DSHA. When we get to the program components, I believe on the next slide, you'll see there are 2 components to this program. So we're allowing organizations to apply either as a sole applicant who will conduct or provide both components of the program, or as a joint application with a partner organization. Regardless of how you apply, each organization in the application will need to sign a grant agreement with DSHA, and partnership applicants will need to sign an MOU between the 2 partners that are applying together. Folks, organizations can only apply as part of one application. So we're asking people to not be a part of their own sole application and then join a partner for an application. You can choose one. Your organization can either apply alone to do both components, which again, we'll talk about in a minute, the components, or you can apply as a joint applicant, but not both. Getting into the program components. As I mentioned, there are 2 program components for this opportunity. There's community outreach and there's case management. In the next few slides, we'll go through what those 2 things mean, but want to talk through some of the logistics first. As I mentioned, there are 2 different ways you can apply. All applications must include both components. So you can either do that by your organization is able to provide both. So you apply solely one organization and one application to provide both case management and community outreach services. Or if your organization is better fit for one or the other, you can work together with another organization to partner and do a joint application. And 2 organizations can apply, one to do each of the services. So one community outreach organization and one case management organization can apply together. So all applicants, regardless of whether you're a single or a joint application, must propose at least one county in the state of Delaware to provide the services outlined in the NOFA. And for each of the geographies or counties that you propose to provide services for this opportunity, you must have a physical presence in those counties. You also must demonstrate experience successfully providing similar activities as required by the program, and demonstrate at least one full-time community outreach specialist or equivalent role and one full-time case manager or equivalent role on staff that has time for this program. This will look different depending on if you're one organization or two organizations that are applying, but as long as you're meeting, if you're a joint application, as long as you're meeting these requirements across the two organizations, and for a singular applicant, that one organization must meet all three of these requirements. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the two different program components. I'm going to talk about community outreach first. The purpose of the community outreach component of this program is to provide outreach, education, referral support to eligible community members that may benefit from both legal aid and wraparound services. There are 5 aspects of this program, and the NOFA goes into more detail on each of these 5 pieces with specific activities that fall under each. But there are 5 overarching required activities for the community outreach component of this program. The first is conducting outreach and education. This is things like going to community events and educating folks about eligible services, about case management, about legal aid. This is potentially talking to landlords, really anything you would think of as going out into the community and talking to people and educating folks. Then there's the initial eligibility screen. So we're asking community outreach specialists or the equivalent role at your organization to talk to folks and ask them specific questions that will be provided to determine what they might be eligible for. And again, this will be an initial eligibility screen. And then referral to services. So based on that initial eligibility screen, what services, case management, legal aid specifically, is this person eligible for? And then making that warm referral. We're asking folks to do data tracking and reporting. Again, this is something that will be provided to organizations that are awarded specific documents and data tracking methods so that you all are able to very easily track outcomes, track progress. But we are going to ask, and we'll talk a little bit later about key performance indicators. We are going to ask folks to track data from this program and so that we can look at performance, but also make any course corrections that are needed as they come up, as opposed to at the end. And then the last thing is that folks will be required to participate in training throughout the course of the year. So we'll have trainings on doing eligibility screens. We'll have ongoing training on what services are available, any changes to those services. We'll likely have communities of practice for the community outreach specialists so they can stay up to date on different things that are happening. If there are new programs that come available, if, like I said, eligibility requirements change, if funding changes. So just to keep folks, the community outreach specialists, make sure that they understand what they're educating the community members on, and if that's changing, how it's changing. So there'll be a mix of training and, like I said, kind of a community of practice that these community outreach folks will be required to participate in as part of this program. Again, all of that is outlined in much more detail in the NOFA, where we have, for each of these 5 components, listed specific activities that are required of the community outreach specialist. The next component is case management. The purpose of the case management component is to provide holistic support to eligible community members that may benefit from more robust and long-term housing support. So I'm sure you all are familiar with case management as a role, where specifically we're looking for folks that can provide really a holistic, as we said, support to individuals that are identified by the community outreach folks, and really provide wraparound services to help people not only get housed, but stay housed stably. And so there are a few more responsibilities here. We outlined 7 required activities for the case management component of this project or program. So intake, when a person is referred over to a case manager, we'll expect them to do an intake process, which DSHA will work with awardees to create a needs and a goals assessment. So again, work with DSHA to think through what this might look like, or if you already have a process in place, we'll work with you on that. But really understanding what the person who's been referred and has done intake, what their goals are for housing and what their needs are, and creating, as you can see on the third component, creating a case management plan based on that needs and goals assessment. We're really hoping that folks can have a really robust case management plan that covers all of the aspects of services that they may need to stay stably housed. So part of that will be a connection to wraparound services for folks that have identified through their needs and goals assessment and their case management plan specific needs that they have. We expect that the case managers will be able to provide connection to wraparound services to meet those needs. The next one, number 5, is continuous communication and follow-up. So we expect that case managers will stay in touch with the folks that they are case managing, and will not only follow up with them, asking how things are going, but continue to provide support. So if a new need comes up or an old need resurfaces, the case managers will be there to really provide that long-term support to individuals who are identified as needing case management. The last 2 are the same as community outreach, data tracking and reporting, same thing. We will provide what data needs to be tracked and how to report it to DSHA. And training, similarly, there will be a community of practice that we'll put together for case managers, but also very specific trainings for case managers on things like wraparound services, what wraparound services are available, making sure everyone's up to date on those services, the eligibility requirements, trainings on how to do a needs and goals assessment. Again, samples of what those trainings might look like are outlined in the NOFA in more detail, but folks that are awarded this funding will be the case managers will be expected to participate in those trainings. So we talked about data and reporting. There will be a program manual for this program that awardees will have access to. And part of that program manual will be outlining key performance indicators. In the NOFA, you will find sample key performance indicators. The finalized list will be in that program manual that will go to awardees, but you can at least see some examples. But we will be asking awardees to provide reports that include data and documentation to allow for monitoring of the identified key performance indicators or KPIs. And like I said, we will not only be doing training on this, but we'll be providing report templates and a lot of guidance on what we need for these key performance indicators. Awardees will work with DSHA to identify goals for each key performance indicator. So while we will identify what KPIs will look like for this program, for example, it might say we are going to track the number of community events that the outreach specialist attends, for example. The DSHA will work with each awardee to decide, okay, what is that goal number and what does that look like in practice for each different awardee? And the data that we collect, I mentioned, will be used to monitor performance towards the goals of the program. And also just to provide ongoing support to improve performance so that we know if things aren't going well a few months in and maybe we need to make some tweaks, if folks need more support, or we know if someone's doing something really, really well and we might want to use it as a teaching training moment for other folks who have been awarded through the community of practice. This will just help us make whatever tweaks or shifts are necessary throughout, as opposed to looking back at the end and trying to do it then. I'm going to talk now about the application and timeline. So this is also straight from the NOFA, this timeline, so you can see it there too. Obviously, the funding round opened last Monday, and we're doing the information session now. Upcoming things to note are, and we'll talk about this TA meetings in just a second in more detail, but this April 14th, this week, is the deadline to schedule the TA meetings with DSHA. We're going to talk about those on another slide, but just know that those are for folks that Organizations that have never been or aren't currently funded by DSHA, those are just for you. Those meetings will be held over the next few weeks, and they're an opportunity to really ask questions and understand what funding from DSHA entails. April 21st is the deadline to submit NOFA questions by the end of the day. That is where you can submit any questions that you didn't get to submit here. And any questions that you did submit here but were not answered, we will do so by May 5th, which is when the responses for all of the questions, whether they were asked on this information session or via email or in technical assistance meetings, any questions that have been asked to us that we have responded to will be in a Q&A document that will get sent out to each of you who is on this information session by email by May 5th. Their applications are due by email by 4 p.m. on May 22nd. The email address for both questions for the NOFA and applications is here, dshanofa@socialcontract.org. It's also multiple times mentioned in the NOFA. And like I said, this presentation will go out to all of you afterwards, so you will have it here as well. We plan to do scoring and reviewing of applications at the end of May, and then announce the awards in June. Grant agreements will be executed no later than July 5th with an effective date of July 1st. The application components, again, in much more detail in the NOFA, but just high level here, again, due May 22nd by 4 p.m. via email. There are 5 components. One of them is only required of joint applicants. The first is a completed and signed organizational information form. All of these things you will find in the NOFA. A proposal narrative, required exhibits, and a program budget. The template is provided. And then, as I said, there's a 5th component for folks that are submitting joint applications, and that is a letter of commitment from each organization, each of the 2 joint applicants, just stating your willingness to work together and how you've decided to divide the program components. Like I said, further guidance on submitting these materials is in the NOFA, along with things like the maximum length for the proposal narrative, what exhibits are required. They're pretty basic. What the program budget should look like. There's a template, as I said, and also the organizational form. It's all in one document in the NOFA. If you scroll to the bottom, there are appendices at the bottom that have things like the organizational information form and the program budget template. If you have any questions, again, please take a look at the NOFA at your earliest chance and read through it all. Look at the templates, look at the forms. I'm going to go back up for a second. The deadline to submit questions, again, is April 21st. So please take a look at it soon and submit questions by that date so we can make sure that we answer them in the Q&A document. TA meetings, I talked a little bit about this on the timeline page, but again, applicants that have never received DSHA funding must set up a technical assistance meeting before you submit an application. You need to email to schedule those TA meetings by this week, April 14th. We don't need to hold them by that time, but we need you to email us to set one up. To schedule, again, same email address. We just need you to send your org name, the names and the emails of anyone you want to attend, at least 3 date and time options, and your goal for the meeting. Very brief, few sentences. We just want to make sure we have the right people on that meeting and can answer your questions. If you're not sure if a meeting is required, please reach out to Devin, who's on here. Her email address is here, devin@destatehousing.com, and she can let you know. But really, if your organization, the only thing is if your organization has never received DSHA funding before, please set up a technical assistance meeting. If you have, please do not. If you do not set up a TA meeting and you have not received funding from DSHA before, you'll not be eligible to submit an application. All right, so we did that. quick enough that hopefully we'll be able to get to Q&A, a lot of questions and answers. So my request is that you please put your Q&A, your questions into the chat if you have them. And we will, the DSHA folks and I will answer them here. Coming off mute with this many people can be messy. So please, I see a question here. So I'll just start reading them out, and I'm going to take off my screen share so I can more easily do this. All right. I'm going to start reading these out. And DSHA folks, if one of you wants to come off mute and answer, that sounds great. Is there a number? I'm going to answer the ones I can real quick, though. Is there a number or an email for us to set up a TA meeting? Yes. It is DSHA NOFA at socialcontract.org, but it's in the presentation that will go out to you, and it's also in the NOFA. So if you just look in the technical assistance section of the NOFA, the email address is there, but it's also kind of plastered throughout the NOFA, so you'll see it. So please do that by the 14th. Okay, so question from Monica. Does DSHA have an EBP for case management assessment tool identified, or a standardized social determinants of health needs assessment tool? Or is it safe to assume that the applicant should identify its own currently used evidence-based assessment tools? Devin or Marva or Justina, do you want to come off mute and answer that one?
Sure, this is Marva. Are you asking, do you need to disclose that in your application, or are we providing that?
Monica, if you want to come off mute, if you can.
Yeah, sorry, I was typing my response.
That's okay.
Unmuting. Hi, everyone. Just wondering if DSHA was looking for specific assessments or assessment tools, or if they had identified one that they wanted to see, or if we just identify in our applications what tools we're going to use for assessments.
Yeah, I think you should identify in your application what tools and resources your agency would be using.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure, get a step ahead in case you guys had a tool that you were looking to see being used. That's it.
In the chat, Devin says she will develop a standard assessment tool for referrals. Is that the only assessment tool that you will develop?
So I'm not, Devin, are you there? So I can check with Devin on that. She's actually traveling today, so I'm not sure she has a good reception to be able to hear our questions, but I can check with her to see what tools DSHA will be providing, and you know, what our expectation is from the applicants.
Okay. That's great. Thanks.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to keep going down the list. So another question is, did you say each individual outreach and case management will be full-time? So yes, we want each applicant to have at least one full-time case manager and one full-time outreach specialist. They do not need to work on this program full-time though. You'll see in the budget template that we have in the NOFA, there's a spot to put what % of their full-time equivalent they will be working on this project. What we do require is that whether you're a sole applicant or a joint applicant, your one or two organizations together have at least one full-time, one person on staff full-time that's provides the outreach specialist role, and one staff full-time on staff that provides case management, and that they have time to provide support for this program. And you can decide what % of their full-time equivalent you need to provide the services outlined in the NOFA. DSHA folks, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that sounds correct.
Okay. All right, the next one is, are there any requirements for outreach workers and case managers, such as education requirements? And is there a chance more funding will be available after the end for July 5th, 2024 to continue the program? So I can answer the first part. We do not outline education requirements for either of those folks. We just ask as a requirement that they have provided similar services to those required in the NOFA. And so we realize that you might have a different title especially for an outreach person. But as long as they have successfully provided similar services as outlined in the NOFA for this program, we do not have education requirements. For the second one, I'm going to turn it over to DSHA. Again, is there a chance more funding will be available after the end to continue the program?
Yeah, so as we get towards the end of this program, we'll level check to see where our ERA2 funding is. And, just as we did with this program, we had the DHAP program and we kind of shifted into this program as Treasury's funding changed. So we'll kind of see where we are with funding, depending on how much we've allocated and how many agencies have applied for it, and determine if we'll be extending the program or if we will be doing a total closeout of our ERA2 funding.
Thanks, Marva. And then the next question, what is the relationship between social contract and DSHA? Social contract is providing consulting services to DSHA for this NOFA. So we've basically been supporting and putting it together, creating the program design and running through this process of coordinating the NOFA and all the applications that come in. Marva, Justina, Devin, anything to add on that?
Nope, sounds good.
All right. Okay, let's see. At what points or with what frequency will the reviews be done? Dawn, I'm going to ask for a clarifying question, if you don't mind. Do you mean the performance reviews for the KPIs or something different? Dawn, if you're talking, we can't hear you, or if you could just answer in the chat. Oh, yes. Okay. Marva, Justina, I'll turn that over to you.
Did she put some? I can't see if she.
Oh, yes. So the question is, at what point or with what frequency will we be reviewing the key performance indicators? I can actually start if that's easier. Yes. So right now we're asking for reports monthly. And so like we said, we'll provide the format for the reports and support in pulling that data. And then each month we'll ask folks to submit reports on what's been happening and as it relates to the KPIs. And then I know the question was about reviews. We'll just be looking at them each month as they come in. And I know in the beginning, that there'll be a ramp up for things, but we'll basically just be looking at them just to see the trends, see any patterns, and make any adjustments as needed throughout. All right. Regarding the 90-10 budget split, I understand that to mean 90% of budget is salary and fringe and 10% for everything else, including occupancy, indirect costs, etc. I believe yes, but I'm going to make sure. Yeah, Marva's shaking her head. Yes. Okay. So yes, that is correct. All right. Next question. Can the FTE at a singular organization serve as both the outreach and case manager? So for example, can the one FTE serve 50% outreach and 50% case management? That is a good question that we did not discuss. So I'm going to ask DSHA if they have a thought on that right now. And if not, maybe we need to put the answer in the Q&A document after we discuss. But Marva, Justina, Devin, if you're there, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, let me take that back to the team and we'll have a conversation about that, because you're right. We didn't think about that. So we'll get an answer out to you, Maria.
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, I don't think I missed any questions, so I'm going to scroll back up. But if I did, please raise your hand and let me know. Are there any other questions? Give people just another minute, just in case. Okay, is there a job description for outreach specialist? There is not. So while there's not a job description, there is a list of required activities that the outreach specialist must conduct. And so I guess you could look at that somewhat as a job description, but we're more flexible on what you're calling the outreach specialist. If you already have someone at your organization that's doing the same activities or similar activities, we don't have a specific job description, but as long as they can and have done similar activities in the past, that should fulfill that requirement. And Monica, I'm sorry, I missed one of your questions. Let me find it. Monica, I'm not seeing it. Do you mind coming off mute and sharing your question?
The 90-10 budget split.
Oh yeah, yep. They said yes, that's correct. What you have.
Oh God, sorry,
Yeah.
talking to my boss on the phone.
All good. No
All
worries.
right, thanks. Bye.
No problem. All right, I'll give people another second to think. And while you do, I'm just going to pull up again the timeline so people can just make sure you get this. And just give one last reminder before we go, and while we give people another minute if they have questions, is to please schedule the TA meeting. Again, if you have not received funding from DSHA before, it is required to schedule a TA meeting by April 14th. So 4 days from today. All you have to do to schedule that is reach out to this email down here, DSHA NOFA at socialcontract.org, with your name, the names of the folks you want on the meeting and their email addresses, 3 date and time options, and just a brief 2 sentences about what you're hoping to get out of the meeting. We will work with you to schedule it in the next few weeks, but please make sure you reach out before the 14th. If you are not sure if you need to schedule one of those meetings, please also reach out and we'll figure out if you do or you don't. If you know that you've had funding from DSHA in the past, your organization, you do not need to schedule. Then the second important deadline coming up on the 21st is the deadline to submit questions for this NOFA. So like I said, any question that we get in this info session, even the ones we answered here and the ones that we didn't, will be in a Q&A document. We'll also add any questions from technical assistance meetings that are relevant that we answer. And then please send anything else by email, and we will also include those. And then a Q&A document will go out no later than May 5th to all of you via email. Then obviously the most important deadline, May 22nd, all applications are due by email at 4 p.m. More information on how to submit and what to submit in the actual NOFA document. Please take a look at that soon so that you can ask any questions that you have before the deadline.
Kirsten, I can give a little bit of clarity on exactly why we came up with this NOFA. So some of you that are on this call participated in the DHAP program. And in that program, we were making direct rental payments and utility payments for Delaware residents. And we made up to 18 months of payments. That program has ended in the way that it was before. And we've now moved it over to the funding that we have left to working with folks that have active evictions or utility disconnects. That ends at the end of June. What we've realized with a lot of these individuals is that either they've maxed out on the 18 months of assistance and they need other supports to stay housed. And quite a lot of the folks that we've talked to just don't know where to turn to get assistance. So we're looking to put together a program where one of your agencies will be able to support these individuals and like full wraparound services. Again, one of the other things that we hear a lot of is that there's so many places to call and they kind of don't know where to start. So this program will really enable folks to have one point of contact, to work with them, to keep them home or housed, and to work with them on what programs in the state they would qualify for. So if you're thinking about applying for this program, think about what your agency currently does and think about what potentially your agency could do to support folks in your county. This is a hands-on program. We're looking for individuals that can meet with people on site where they are, go out to apartment complexes, have events on weekends and evenings. So this is assisting people that really need as much support as possible. So that's kind of our thought behind this. So keep that in mind. This is completely different from the DHAP program, where it was basically submitting applications for folks that needed rental assistance. This is going to be working with a lot of those individuals now that are moving into potentially being evicted or not, the inability to pay their rent or their utilities or their monthly expenses.
Thanks, Marva. So I also linked to the, so I saw a question about the complete application will be sent via email. You can get everything you need is in the NOFA. So if you, I put the link to the NOFA in the chat. It'll also come to you all via email when we send our follow-up this week. Everything is in there. So it walks through what needs to be included in the proposal narrative, how long that proposal narrative can be. It also includes a budget template. It includes the organizational information form you need to submit and all the exhibits that are needed. So everything can be found there. And then it just asks that you submit them all as a combined PDF via email. All of that is in the NOFA. Everything you need is in one document. So we have another question. What is success based off number of contacts or number of folks who remain housed, or is this fluid? Marva, do you want to go or?
Yeah, so I'm going to say it's a more fluid program. We're really, and I can answer kind of Rob's question in this as well. We recognize that there is little money to give direct support payments to folks. I mean, at the end of the day, what everybody needs is somebody to write a check and solve a problem for them. We're really looking to give them additional resources, such as, you know, maybe some counseling on budgeting, how they're spending their money, what resources they have. We've had individuals that have applied for the program that are no longer working and didn't know that they could apply for unemployment. So, you know, they may have had a DHAP individual that said, hey, you need to go apply for unemployment, and they were approved for that. Or they need to sign up for benefits, food stamps, that nature, and they didn't know how, didn't have the resources, or just didn't know that they were eligible for services. You know, potentially signing up for social security, if they need assistance with, you know, applying for child support. It's really helping them with the resources that they may not be familiar with.
And then Marva, one more question for you, which is, will the program release eligibility guidelines, or will each agency create their own eligibility criteria?
You know what, I have to take a look at the guidelines. We'll have to get back to you on that one. I can't remember the answer to that one.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain that we'll put an answer in the Q&A, but that each agency won't create their own, like each awardee will not create their own eligibility criteria. There will be one eligibility criteria, but I think the difference will be, for example, case managers will be referring out to services at other organizations, and those will have their own eligibility criteria, which we cannot change. But for this program, I think we discussed there will not be more than one eligibility criteria that different people have to manage. Like to be part of the housing, this HOS program, you will not need to manage multiple eligibility requirements. But that's another one that we will get more specific on in the Q&A document. What is the process for the referral of clients? So again, this will depend. There's multiple different components of the process, so of the program. So there's a referral process from the outreach person to the case manager, or the outreach person to legal aid. And we will have a set referral process laid out for those. It will also depend if it's one organization who's doing both outreach and case management, or if it's two organizations that need to refer between the two. So that's something that we will work with the awardees on. And again, I mentioned there'll be a program manual that will lay out the referral process. But we do expect it to be a warm referral. So if it's one organization doing outreach to case management, then obviously it's an internal referral. If it's two organizations and we need to come up with we'll work with those two to come up with a process for referral that makes sense for those two organizations. So we don't have like a step-by-step laid out right now, but we will have something in the program manual once the awards are given. Then there's the referral from case management to wraparound services. And again, that will also be in the program manual. Part of that will have to follow what the wraparound services referral process is. And so there might be different processes for different services. And that will be part of the training for case managers if they don't already have that knowledge. Marva, Justina, anything to add to that?
Nope, I think you got it all covered here, then.
All right. Another question, since we don't have job descriptions, would you consider offering a checklist to ensure that our personnel is following a process that meets the expectations of the grant? Yes, so this will also be the program manual. The NOFA outlines high level the different activities that will be required for both the outreach and the case management people, whoever's involved in those components. The program manual will be much more detailed. So we expect it to be kind of like a full process manual for how to conduct outreach and then how to conduct case management. And within that, we'll lay out in much more detail. And I don't know if it'll be a checklist or how we'll lay it out, but similarly, like a checklist will make sure that there's a process that you all follow. And then we are going to provide trainings on those processes as well. Can the case manager support be provided virtual or does it have to be in person?
I can answer that one. So, I mean, obviously, there's going to be some times when you have a virtual appointment with an individual. I think what we're really looking for is supporting the individual in the best way that works for them. So if it's a virtual appointment, that makes sense. But if you have somebody that doesn't have the ability to meet with you virtually, then obviously it would be in person. And, you know, we've had conversations with a lot of individuals where, like, if they miss an hour or 2 hours from work, it's the difference between them being able to pay a bill or not pay a bill. So we're looking for flexibility in evenings, weekends, whether it be a virtual, a phone call, but really being able to boots on the ground, be where those folks need you to be.
And Marva makes an excellent point too about, and this is in the NOFA, about that flexibility, especially, well, for both case managers and outreach specialists, but we do lay out in the NOFA that those folks need to, there's the expectation that there will be some things outside of a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, because a lot of events in the community happen on the weekends, happen on evenings. And like Marva just said, you know, folks might need to have case management appointments after 5 o'clock or at some other time that maybe isn't in the normal hours of work. So that is in the NOFA as well, just laying out that expectation that there will be some time that's expected outside of normal hours. How many agencies will be awarded a contract? We don't have an expectation right now. We know there's a set amount of money, and we're going to take into consideration how much folks think it will cost to conduct the program and all the components of the program, and then look at the applications and figure out how many we can accommodate. Marva, Justina, anything else on that?
Nope, that is correct.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to give people a few more minutes to ask questions. And while you do, I will use this time to, oh, we have another question. Good. You don't have to hear me repeat the dates again. So one more question. Will the agency awarded be expected to cover the entire state, or will it be awarded by county? So we're asking applicants to just propose what county or counties you would like to provide services in, and then have your budget reflect that. And we ask that, so you don't have to cover the entire state. We ask that you have a physical presence in each of the counties that you propose providing services in. So if you're a sole applicant and you want to propose 2 counties, you need to have a physical presence in both those counties. If you're a joint applicant, you need to make sure that at least one of your organizations has a physical presence in each of the counties that you are proposing. So you're not expected to cover the entire state unless you apply to cover the entire state, just 1 or more counties. Okay, just one last reminder on dates, and then I think we'll just give people 2 more minutes, and then if there's no more questions, you are more than welcome to submit them via email. But I'll just do one more reminder on dates, which is the upcoming in order of upcoming priority, which is April 14th of this week, deadline to schedule the TA meeting. Again, just reach out to the email address provided and share 3 date time options, the folks you want included on the meeting, including their email address, your organization, and a few sentences on what you're hoping to get out of the meeting. Then if you have a question on whether you're required to schedule a TA meeting, please let us know and ask via email, and we can answer and let you know. If you have not received funding from DSHA, you need to schedule a TA meeting to be eligible for applying. The next upcoming deadline is the deadline to submit questions by April 21st at 5 p.m. via email. So please read it sooner rather than later and submit your questions. We will send responses, respond to all those questions no later than May 5th. And then applications are due via email by 4 o'clock Eastern time on May 22nd. And the email address, everything you need to apply is in the NOFA document. All right. What is the max number of outreach specialists and community management, case management each agency can apply for? I don't know if I'm completely understanding that question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Kirsten, I don't think we set a max. I don't think we set a max. So just include it in your proposal, and we can review it.
Oh yeah. So there's exactly, and there's a part of the budget, the template. It asks you for who will be working on the project, on this program, and what FTEs, what % of their FTEs, and so I think it's either part of the budget or the organizational information form, but we do ask that, so you can just put it in and make sure you're including it in the budget. And I would say whatever number of folks you think are necessary to complete the required activities, and it'll be different for everyone because different folks are going to be doing different geographies. So yeah, please just put in what you think is needed. And yes, the answer regarding 1 person for both roles would be very helpful. Okay, yes. We can, Marva, what are your thoughts on just sending out a response to this group on that 1 question in the next week or so? Do you think that is feasible?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, so since that is something that is clearly top of mind for folks, we can get an answer out to you all by email regarding that question, 1 person for both roles, by the end of this week. So look out for that. And then there's a question from Terry on, will there be quotas? I'm going to ask Marva if you already know what that means, and I don't have to ask for clarification, then please answer. If not, I probably need more context.
Terry, I think, are you asking, like with DHAP, we explained like how many applications we thought you should be submitting?
Correct. Is there
on a monthly basis? Are you asking if this is similar?
Correct. Is there
Yes.
a particular quota that you would like for each agency to meet?
So at this time, I don't know about quotas. I'll have to go back and look and see if we set those. But I don't think there's a specific quota or a targeted number, since this is a more holistic program and it's more case management. And it's not just submitting applications for a yes or a no.
Thank you.
And to add to that, for the for the KPIs, the key performance indicators, we will work with, DSHA will work with each awardee to figure out what targets make the most sense for the KPIs. And so it will probably not be the same. It won't be like a quota like you're describing, as Marva said, but there will be, there will be some sort of key performance indicator or number that folks are working towards for specific things. And then another question, the FTE function for this project is not limited to the number of residential clients we serve.
I don't understand. Is that I'm not sure what, if you could unmute and kind of explain.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is mainly an outreach project. So we have already in our I guess wheelhouse clients that we serve that are residents. These are people in transition living in various transitional housing programs that we operate. So, but this would be directed more to people that are not in our housing programs currently.
Yes, so I think this program would be, so explain to us in your proposal what you're thinking. Like if you're just going to be working with the individuals in your program, you could include that in your application. I think what we're looking for is for individuals to be able to connect with you and your agency. But if you're trying to submit an application and kind of work it through how you currently operate, you could do that, and we can take a look at it. I think I'm answering your question. So you're
yeah. Okay. I think I'm kind of getting it. So really because our whole interest is in increasing capacity and serving more people and helping them get the result they're looking for. So clearly it would be more than just the 20 or so people that we have in our residential programs.
Correct. This is a 1-year NOFA. So, we're looking for you to reach as many individuals as possible. I'm going to say it makes sense that you would work with the individuals that are part of your organization currently, but also expand out to other individuals that are in the county that you're going to be applying for, doing the work in.
Excellent. I got it.
Awesome. There is one more question, but it's definitely going to take more than 30 seconds that we have. So we're going to put, Heather, your last question into the Q&A document and provide an answer there, which is a great question about expectations and sustainability. So I promise we will get to that, but I don't want to keep people any longer. So thank you all for joining. Again, please read the application and the NOFA and submit your questions. And we will be sending out an email after this with the slides, which includes where to submit. We'll include a link to the NOFA. Also work to get you an answer to that question about whether one person can fulfill the 2 roles. So thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And we hope to hear from a lot of you soon. Thanks, everyone.